Hey everyone, how's it going? Today you're going to learn about how to properly set up your drum set in a way that's comfortable, you can get the most playability out of it, that gets rid of back pain, fly around the drum set smoothly. My name is Jeremy Drummer and I have 20 plus years behind the drummer seat. Let's do this. So as you can see, I've gotten pretty quick at setting up my drum set. No, seriously though, I'm lazy, so I've done about all I can think of at this point to be able to set up as quick and efficient as possible. But start out with your kick, snare, and hat. You could see, to knock out this question right off the bat, I set my kick drum to the right side like that, primarily so that it sits me squarely with the front of the stage and the audience, as opposed to being twisted to the left. Twisted to the left is okay if you want to, really groove with your bass player if he's over there, but I like facing the audience square. This is roughly ballpark where it should be for me. As you can see, I've got the blue tape down. Things are just a little off now and I need to re-tape them. Once you kind of have your kick drum, snare drum, and hi-hat set up roughly where you want them, the next thing I'll do is play with my seat height and my foot position. So here you can see I'm trying to figure out where my feet land naturally. And what I'll do is I'll close my eyes, I'll lift both feet in the air, kind of drop them down, and wherever they land, theoretically should be where my pedal should be. Now this will change a little bit as your seat height changes. Once you get going, we can fine tune things a little better. This is just to get it pretty close to where it's gonna be. Here I'm also trying to feel for impact and find the sweet spot of the distance forward and backwards of my kick drum, like where I get the most power and where it feels most comfortable. You can kind of see the angle of my right leg, my kick drum leg, and it's almost 90 degrees. Try not to go more than 90. Probably gonna need to wind up lifting my stool a little bit so that I'm not sitting so close to 90 degrees. So you wanna look at your leg, the angle of your leg. Like I said, you don't want it to be 90 degrees. There's some guys, Chad Smith and those guys, who play really low, and they've made it. So I can't say that there's anything wrong per se with that. If that's your thing and that's what you wanna do, great. But what happens for me is I really have to lift my right leg up in order to get the kick drum to work that way. What happens is it starts hurting in my back. I can feel that back muscle really having to pull to lift my entire leg up, and so therefore it's not very comfortable. I think if you're gonna play this low, you pretty much almost have to play heel down. You do it heel up, but it's much easier playing heel down when you're this low. So in terms of posture, one thing I've found that I've done in the past in order to correct my posture is I'll raise everything up. I'll raise the snare drum, the hi-hat, and the toms up so that in order to play them without hitting the rim, I have to sit up straight. Over time, I've worked it back down to where it's kind of more in the normal, so to speak, range, but it definitely works because I was required to sit up straight, otherwise I couldn't hit the drum right. So to get pretty good kind of ballpark, I'm adjusting my stool to where my leg's just a little bit above 90 degrees. I found that to be my personal sweet spot. Ideally, you want to keep both heels kind of at the same level, keep both heels at the same height so that you're balanced left and right. You don't want one side pushing more than the other and vice versa. Because one thing that I found personally that I had a problem with that I had to correct was I would keep my left heel down and my right heel up. That caused my body to twist, and that was no bueno. So if you're as picky as me, you just kind of have to keep playing with it until you find that sweet spot. I found that there's a certain point where it's just right. Especially if you're a drummer, you know what I'm talking about. But there's a before the beat, there's an after the beat, and there's right on the beat. And I'm aiming for right on the beat. Say if I lower my snare drum, that could cause me to play behind the beat because it's taking longer for me to strike the snare drum. If I raise it up and it's too high, theoretically that could make it before the beat, but most likely I'd be hitting the rim. But I think you get what I'm saying. You want it to be where it's landing right where you want it. Same thing for the kick drum, snare drum, hi-hat, everything. Every test that you do, make sure that you're sitting upright in the ideal position, even if this doesn't feel right, because you want to be forced to play in the right posture and not fall back into a poor posture. And don't worry. Your body will eventually adjust to it, your muscles will strengthen, etc. You'll be good. No worries. And just play some grooves and see if it feels right. Adjust some things, play some grooves, adjust some things, play some grooves. Right now I'm feeling for balance. I'm trying to make sure my body feels balanced when I'm using both feet. Make sure I'm not leaning one side or the other. So here I'm moving over to my left foot, my hi-hat foot, and still checking how my feet land, making sure that looks right, and then just making sure everything feels correct. Checking for balance, checking for feel. Always check your posture. Always check your posture. Another thing I'll do, which I'll talk about probably in another video, is I angle my instruments, snare drum, toms, and cymbals, in a way that my rebound is beneficial to the next hit. For example, my rack tom, I'll usually tilt a little towards the right, because generally speaking, I'm going from my small tom, my rack tom, down to my floor tom, or to the next tom next to it, depending on my setup. But it causes the rebound to kind of be thrown in the direction that my hands are moving. Here I'm going back to the feel and the timing between my instruments, my kick and snare in particular, and trying to make sure that they land perfectly together. So I'm raising my snare drum a little bit, probably because I was playing behind the beat with the snare drum. Like I said, it's a give and take. Everything affects each other, so you may move one thing and you also probably need to move another thing. Don't worry, you'll get it. Another little drummer no-no is don't rest your hand on your leg, your left hand on your left leg when you hit. You want to keep it up off your leg. But that also comes back to your posture. You know, the higher you sit, the straighter you sit, the higher it raises your hand. Finding that sweet spot where you can get a rim shot and a center hit, if that's your thing. I'm mostly a center hitter, so I'm not as concerned about the rim. If I do need to hit the rim, you'll see I need to drop my left shoulder a little bit. If I had to play a whole show like that, I would definitely be moving my snare position. My eyes are closed. I don't want my vision to be affecting my muscles per se. And so I got my eyes closed and I'm feeling the hit for where it actually feels right when it hits the drum. You'll know it when it's right. I mean, I can tell that my hands are starting to get faster, having more fun. It just feels good. And remember, you want to put the drums in the positions that's going to force you to play in the proper way. Again, remember, play in the ideal posture. Also play in the way that you want to play. So if you're a swinger, swing those arms. Don't just sit there and play in a different way and then go to the gig or the show and play differently. You know what I mean? Set it up the way you want to play and your body will adapt to it. You know, it may not feel right now, but your drum setup will force you to play the correct way. And don't worry, it doesn't take that long. You're a drummer. Muscle memory will come quick. Little pro tip for you, don't ever tighten your snare baskets on your snares or your toms tight. Leave them loose, because otherwise it'll choke the bottom. You won't get as much resonance out of them. Another pro tip, the L brackets that actually hold the drum in place, don't put those where the lugs are either. That'll also affect your sound. Now we're going to move on to the hi-hat. I like to play where my tip is hitting the cymbal. I found that articulation sounds the best. The volume of the hat's a little quieter and it blends with the overall drum set better. And my accents sound better. Lifting my hi-hat like this actually helps me to set up straighter, but in order to get the articulation that I like, I have to really raise my shoulders up, and that eventually will cause shoulder pain, so I choose to keep the hi-hat lower. So find what works best for you. Again, all these things that I'm saying, they're all relative to your position. So you may like it different. Use this as a suggestion to get you where you want to go. I continually have to remind myself to correct my posture, otherwise I'll get down the road and things won't be right and I'll have to re-correct them again. You'll probably also find you can play more stuff that you couldn't play before once you get the setup right. It just comes easier. Balance, balance, balance. So here I'm checking where my kick drum and my hi-hat land so that they hit at the same time, like identically at the same time. I don't want flams, I want just same hits, identical on top of each other hits. You'll find I close my eyes a lot because I want to eliminate my visual interpretation and just work on my muscle memory and feeling. So just a quick recap, the order I went in. Set up your kick drum, your snare drum, your stool, and your hi-hat. Get them roughly set. Close your eyes, lift your feet, land your feet down, and put your pedals of your kick drum and your hi-hat about where your feet land. Then adjust accordingly. Adjust the kick drum forward and backwards to get the best feel from your leg. Adjust the height of your stool, also to affect the feel of your kick drum when you hit it. Then go to your snare drum, adjust the height of your snare, close your eyes, figure out that sweet spot where your stick just lands exactly where you want it. You may also want to play with your stool height when you're messing with your snare, but of course it's also going to affect your kick drum. Kind of just a fine dance. You move things around, get them placed where you want them, move some other things around. You'll get there, no worries. As you can tell, I'm pretty picky about my placement of things, but taking a lot of time now saves me a ton of time later because I'm going to lock everything down. It's going to be taped, it's going to be marked, so it's always set up the same way. So tune in next week for the continuation where I'll add cymbals and toms and get those set appropriately. Thanks guys, love you. This is how I recommend you set up your drum set. This is what I've found over 20 years I've been playing that works best for me. But all that being said, I find that, hey, I want to try something different, and then that becomes my new. If you see something you want to try, then try it. And if you've noticed that parts of your body are hurting, maybe don't try it, or maybe work on it for a little bit until your muscles in that area get stronger. But overall, do what's comfortable for you. Don't just sit down and play a drum set without adjusting anything. Number one, asking for trouble, and number two, won't sound as good as you can. So don't do that. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask. I'm an open book. Also, check out my channel for other interesting things. You can learn more about me, where I came from. You can watch live performances of myself. So comment below if you found this video helpful. Give it a thumbs up. Everybody's created different, and so my setup may not work for you, but for me, this is what I found works best. You can also find in a later video my tips and tricks for quick setup and teardown. I'll make another video for you guys for that. If you're interested, check it out on my channel. Later. Love you guys. Like, share, and subscribe. Jeremy Drummer. Keep on rocking.